3 months after her dramatic resignation, Karen sat in her living room watching Riverside Estates through her front window like a general surveying a lost battlefield. She'd been certain the community would collapse without her iron fist maintaining order, but instead, something unexpected had happened. It had thrived. The new HOA board, led by reasonable people who actually listened to residents, had streamlined the ridiculous rules Karen had accumulated over her 5-year reign. Pool hours were extended. Garden gnome restrictions were lifted. The community had organized block parties and neighborhood watch groups, things Karen had always opposed as frivolous distractions from important regulations. Even more galling, property values had actually increased. Jake Morrison waved cheerfully as he walked past her house, his previously forbidden wind chimes tinkling merrily in the breeze. Karen's eye twitched. Those chimes violated Section 8.4 of the noise ordinance she'd drafted personally. Her phone buzzed with a notification she'd been dreading but expecting. HOA Karen Pool Lady gets evicted. The gossip blog had discovered her financial troubles. Without her HOA board stipend and facing mounting legal fees from residents who'd sued over her more egregious violations, Karen was 3 months behind on her mortgage. The irony wasn't lost on her. The woman who'd spent years threatening others with property liens was now facing foreclosure herself. But Karen Whitmore had always been a survivor. As she packed her belongings into boxes labeled temporary relocation, she refused to use the word eviction. She discovered something that made her pause. A letter from Sunset Grove Estates, a community 3 towns over. "We've heard about your dedication to maintaining community standards," the letter read. "Our HOA board position offers competitive compensation and full authority over compliance enforcement. Would you be interested in an interview?" Karen smiled for the first time in months. They'd researched her tenure at Riverside Estates and wanted her specifically for her reputation as an enforcer. They hadn't heard about the pool incident, or they didn't care. "One community's Karen is another community's savior," she murmured, adding the letter to her box of essentials. As she loaded her car with the remnants of her Riverside Estates empire, Karen caught sight of her reflection in the window, older, worn down by months of humiliation, but still burning with that familiar fire to impose order on chaos. The pool incident had destroyed her authority here, but authority could be rebuilt. Rules could be rewritten. Community standards could be enforced. Karen Whitmore was down, but she wasn't finished. She drove away from Riverside Estates without a backward glance, already planning her comeback. Sunset Grove Estates had no idea what was coming their way, but they'd learned soon enough that some people never truly change. They just find new territories to conquer. In her rearview mirror, children played in the community pool during extended evening hours, their laughter echoing through the neighborhood Karen had once ruled with an iron fist. She cranked up the radio and pressed harder on the accelerator. The HOA Karen was dead. Long live the HOA Karen. Karen Whitmore crouched behind the pool equipment shed at 2:47 am, her HOA board member badge glinting in the moonlight as she fumbled with her phone's flashlight. The Riverside Estates community pool sparkled innocently before her, but Karen knew better. She'd received 3 separate complaints about suspicious late-night activity and unauthorized pool usage, and tonight she was determined to catch the culprits red-handed. "Time to show these rule breakers who's really in charge," she muttered, adjusting her sensible cardigan against the cool night air. What Karen didn't notice was the motion-activated security camera that homeowner Jake Morrison had installed the previous week. The same Jake Morrison whose repeated requests for pool maintenance had been dismissed by Karen's committee for being unnecessarily demanding. As Karen crept closer to the pool's edge, scanning for evidence of illegal nighttime swimming, her phone buzzed with an urgent text from her neighbor. "Emergency. My sprinkler system is flooding my garage." Without hesitation, Karen pivoted toward the crisis, but in her haste, she misjudged the distance to the pool's edge. Her sensible orthopedic shoes found nothing but air. The splash echoed through the quiet community like a gunshot. Karen surfaced, sputtering and gasping, her carefully styled hair now plastered to her skull like a wet helmet. Her phone, containing months of HOA violation photos and her precious community guidelines app sank to the bottom with a final, accusatory bubble. "This is a disaster," she whispered, treading water in her now transparent white blouse and soggy khakis. But Karen Whitmore hadn't become the most feared HOA board member in 3 counties by giving up easily. She hauled herself out of the pool with surprising agility for a woman of 53, leaving a trail of chlorinated water across the pristine pool deck. Her badge hung askew and her clipboard, her weapon of choice for issuing violations, floated sadly in the shallow end like a defeated surrender flag. "Nobody can know about this," she declared to the empty night, wringing out her cardigan with grim determination. "My reputation, my authority. Everything depends on maintaining order and respect in this community." But as Karen squelched her way toward the exit, she failed to notice the small red light blinking steadily from Jake Morrison's security camera, faithfully recording every humiliating second of the HOA president's midnight swim. The next morning would bring consequences Karen couldn't imagine, and her iron grip on Riverside Estates would face its greatest challenge yet. Jake Morrison nearly choked on his morning coffee when he reviewed his security footage. There, in glorious high-definition clarity, was HOA tyrant Karen Whitmore, taking an unexpected midnight dip. The same woman who'd fined him $50 for leaving his trash can out 6 minutes past pickup time. "Holy shit," he whispered, watching Karen struggle out of the pool like a drowned cat. "This is gold." By 9 a.m., Jake had uploaded the footage to the private Riverside Estates Facebook group with the caption, "Caught our HOA president conducting a very thorough pool inspection last night. Guess the rules about after-hours swimming don't apply to everyone." The response was immediate and explosive. Comments flooded in faster than Jake could read them. "Is she peeing in the pool?" "Finally, someone caught Karen breaking her own rules. Look at her trying to fish out that clipboard. She's more worried about her precious violations than drowning." Karen discovered her viral fame during her usual morning rounds, clipboard in hand, a backup, naturally, when neighbor after neighbor smirked at her instead of offering their typical fearful nods. Her phone, a replacement rushed from the store at dawn, buzzed incessantly with notifications. When she saw the Facebook post, her blood pressure spiked so dramatically she briefly saw stars. "Take this down immediately," she typed with shaking fingers. "This is a violation of privacy and community standards." But the damage was spreading beyond Riverside Estates. Someone had shared the video to TikTok with trending hashtags. Local news stations were calling. Her phone rang constantly with reporters asking for comment about the HOA Karen pool incident. At 2 p.m., Karen stormed into Jake Morrison's front yard, her replacement clipboard clutched like a shield. "You violated Section 12.3 of the HOA covenant regarding surveillance equipment without proper notification," she announced, her voice shaking with rage and humiliation. Jake opened his door wider, revealing a camera crew from Channel 7 News in his living room. "Perfect timing, Karen. They hear about your midnight swim. Care to comment?" Karen's face cycled through several shades of red before settling on burgundy. "This is harassment. I was conducting official HOA business. At 2:47 a.m. In the pool, with your clothes on." Jake's grin widened. What kind of official business was that exactly? The news crew leaned forward eagerly. Karen realized she stood at a crossroads. Admit her embarrassing mistake and lose face, or double down and risk even greater humiliation. She chose poorly. "I was investigating reports of unauthorized pool contamination," she declared imperiously. Sometimes leadership requires personal sacrifice to protect community standards. The reporter's eyebrows shot skyward. "So you intentionally entered the pool fully clothed to test for contamination?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Around her, neighbors gathered with phones recording, waiting for her next move. The interview aired that evening on all 3 local stations, and by morning, Karen's contamination investigation had become a national meme. The video compilation showed her confident declaration, followed immediately by security footage of her flailing in the pool, clipboard floating nearby like evidence of her absurdity. Hashtag HOA Karen Pool Investigation trended on Twitter for 3 days. Karen barricaded herself in her house, emerging only to collect increasingly vicious hate mail and multiple resignation demands from fellow board members. The community that once feared her now mocked her openly. Pool noodles appeared on her lawn. Someone left a laminated pool rules sign on her front door with "Applies to everyone" written in red marker. But Karen Whitmore hadn't clawed her way to HOA supremacy by surrendering to public opinion. If anything, the humiliation only hardened her resolve. "They want to see what real power looks like," she muttered, reviewing community bylaws at her kitchen table surrounded by legal texts and violation notices. "I'll show them exactly what happens when you challenge authority." She spent the week crafting her counterattack, a comprehensive community audit, targeting every homeowner who dared to mock her. Jake Morrison would face violations for his unauthorized security system. Mrs. Patterson would be cited for her garden gnomes exceeding the 2-decoration limit. The Johnsons' basketball hoop was 6 inches too close to the street. By Friday, Karen had prepared 17 violation notices, each more petty than the last. She armed herself with her measuring tape, camera, and the nuclear option, a motion to implement emergency HOA powers during community crisis situations. "If they want a war," she said, sealing the violation envelopes with aggressive precision, "they'll get one." But when Karen stepped outside to begin her revenge tour, she discovered her authority had already crumbled. Neighbors ignored her completely. Parents instructed their children to walk away if she approached. When she tried to measure the Hendersons' mailbox height, Mr. Henderson simply closed his garage door in her face. At the community center that evening, Karen arrived for the emergency board meeting she'd called, expecting to rally support and reassert control. Instead, she found the room packed with residents and a banner reading "Recall KRN" stretched across the back wall. Board member Tom Willis, her longtime ally, wouldn't meet her eyes. "Karen, we need to talk. The community has lost confidence in your leadership. We think it's best if you step down voluntarily." Karen's hands trembled as she gripped her podium. "You're all making a terrible mistake. Without strong leadership, this community will descend into chaos. Property values will plummet. Standards will disappear. Is that what you want?" The room erupted in unified response. Yes. Karen stared at the sea of faces. Neighbors she protected from violations. Community standards she'd fought to maintain. Orders she'd sacrificed everything to preserve. They were choosing chaos over her careful control. "Fine," she whispered, then louder. "Fine. But don't come crying to me when everything falls apart."